Something is happening in Texas that could shake Washington, and the reaction is already getting intense. This is not just another campaign story. This race could become one of the biggest tests of political momentum. The president's endorsed Republican candidate just moved into a powerful position in a closely watched Senate fight. On the other side is a Democratic Senate candidate whose past comments are now drawing major conservative attention. And when voters hear some of those comments, a lot of people are asking the same question. Is this Texas politics now? One podcast moment is getting replayed because the candidate gave an answer that instantly became political ammunition. Asked what he cared about beyond friends and family, he reportedly pointed to transgender youth as a major concern. Now, supporters may call that compassion. Critics hear it very differently, especially in a Texas Senate race. That is why this story is not only about one quote. It is about cultural trust, voter instincts, and political timing. The candidate has also leaned into progressive language on identity, faith, gender, and public policy. For conservative voters, those clips are now being framed as proof that the Democratic side is out of step. And in politics, perception can become reality fast, especially when the internet gets hold of a candidate's old remarks. The president did not ignore it. His online response turned this race into a national conservative talking point. He congratulated the Republican candidate, praised the primary win, and immediately defined the opponent in harsh terms. That matters because the president understands branding. Once he frames a race, the entire conversation can change. The Republican candidate had reportedly been outspent, but the endorsement became a force multiplier. That is the bigger story here. The president's influence inside the Republican Party still looks incredibly strong. Supporters are pointing to a long endorsement streak and saying the party has been fully reshaped around his agenda. And whether critics like it or not, Republican candidates still want that seal of approval for one reason: it moves voters. But before we get to the bigger national stakes, we need to slow down and look at why Texas is so important. Texas is not just a big state. It is a political symbol, an electoral prize, and a national message board. When a Senate race in Texas becomes competitive, both parties understand the stakes go far beyond one seat. The Republican side sees this race as a chance to hold ground and prove the America First coalition still dominates. The Democratic side sees it as a rare opening to test whether cultural issues can be reframed in a red state. But that strategy becomes risky when the candidate's own words give opponents an easy target. That is why old clips, podcast answers, and social media posts suddenly matter so much in modern campaigns. Critics are now highlighting comments about gender, faith, meat consumption, prisons, immigration, and public identity. To his supporters, those positions may sound compassionate or progressive. To opponents, they sound politically radioactive. And that is the gap the Republican campaign wants voters to stare at every single day until Election Day. Major conservative voices are already turning the race into a referendum on culture, borders, crime, and common sense. This is where the fight gets bigger than one candidate. It becomes a fight over what voters think is normal. The Democratic candidate's critics argue his worldview sounds more like campus activism than Texas representation. That argument may be blunt, but it is highly effective because it gives the public a simple contrast. One side says compassion, the other side says extremism, and that is exactly how campaigns become emotional. The president's online post leaned hard into that contrast, especially on borders, crime, faith, and cultural issues. Notice the strategy. He did not just praise his own side. He defined the other side before they could respond. That is a classic political move, but the president does it with a sharper, more viral style than traditional politicians. And once that framing hits, the opponent is no longer just running a campaign. He is answering a character question. That is especially dangerous in Texas, where voters often respond strongly to authenticity, toughness, and cultural clarity. Now let's talk about the endorsement effect, because that may be the most important signal in this entire story. The endorsement record being circulated by supporters is meant to send one message: this political machine still wins. Some races are easy, others are expensive, messy, and closely watched. But the pattern is what supporters care about. In this case, the Republican candidate's victory is being framed as another proof point for the president's influence. And that is why party insiders are paying attention. This is not just a primary result, it is a warning shot. If Republican officials ignore the voters behind this movement, they risk learning the same lesson the hard way. The source script makes that point aggressively, arguing that candidates survive only when they follow the voters. The policy list is familiar: border enforcement, crime, economic repair, less bureaucracy, and ending identity-based mandates. Whether you agree with every word or not, that is the agenda many conservative voters believe they chose. So when a Republican breaks from that agenda, the backlash is not subtle. It comes fast, loud, and organized. That is why this Senate race is also a message to every official watching from Capitol Hill. The president's message congratulated the winner while still giving the outgoing senator a respectful farewell. That contrast matters. He can be gracious to an ally leaving the stage, then ruthless about the next fight. And then he turned his attention right back to the Democratic opponent with the kind of language only he uses. The result is predictable. Supporters laugh, critics object, and the race gets more national attention. But underneath the jokes is a serious campaign strategy. Make the opponent answer for every controversial clip. That includes past comments about faith, gender identity, immigration enforcement, criminal justice, and Texas culture. In a close race, those issues can become more powerful than fundraising, consultants, or polished campaign ads. Because voters may forget a slogan, but they remember the moment a candidate sounded completely outside their values. That is why the Republican side wants the campaign centered on culture, borders, crime, and common sense. But the source script does not stop there. It widens the story into the president's broader political comeback. The source script argues that the president has not merely joined the Republican Party, he has reshaped it. Supporters point to closed border messaging, deregulation, crime enforcement, and rejection of identity politics. That is the political bargain his voters believe they made. Promises in the campaign, action once in power. And that is why his base treats establishment resistance almost like betrayal, not ordinary disagreement. The original commentary makes that frustration clear, especially toward Republicans who talk tough but govern softly. For those voters, the test is simple: secure the border, enforce the law, protect women's spaces, and fix the economy. You can hear the frustration underneath it. They do not want symbolic speeches. They want results. That is why the Texas primary result is being celebrated as more than one candidate beating another candidate. It is being presented as another reminder that the base can still punish politicians who drift away. Then the script shifts to another controversy: recordings tied to the former president's special counsel interview. According to the source, the former executive is trying to block release of audio connected to that investigation. And the question the host raises is blunt: why fight the release if there is nothing politically damaging inside? To be careful, we should say this clearly: legal moves do not automatically prove wrongdoing or concealment. But politically, optics matter. And to critics, fighting disclosure only keeps the cognitive fitness debate alive. The source connects that issue to broader questions about who was really making decisions in the prior White House.
That claim needs cautious framing. There are serious questions, but we should not present speculation as established fact.
Still, for political commentators, the audio fight is exactly the kind of story that keeps public trust under pressure. Expect major outlets, conservative commentators, and Democratic allies to frame this story in completely different ways. That is modern media. The same document can become proof, spin, or distraction, depending on who is holding it. And from there, the script turns back to the bigger argument: why the president keeps dominating the conversation. The source argues the president dominates because he is not chasing fame, money, or ordinary political approval. His supporters believe he is motivated by a deeper mission: reversing national decline and forcing America to win again. Critics hear that and call it personality politics. Supporters hear it and call it loyalty to the country. The commentary points to decades of public interviews, arguing his message on trade, strength, and national pride stayed consistent. That consistency is part of the appeal. Voters believe he has been saying the same thing for years. Whether opponents dismiss it or not, consistency becomes powerful when voters think other politicians shift with the wind.
The source then moves into a darker claim that powerful interests do not want this America First agenda to succeed.
That needs careful wording. We can discuss political incentives without claiming a hidden plot as proven fact. Still, the frustration is real. Many voters believe elites benefit when borders stay weak and institutions avoid accountability. That sense of distrust is exactly why stories about endorsements, courts, media, and culture all merge together. The stronger version of this argument is simple. Voters want leaders who protect the country, not manage its decline. But we should reject blanket attacks on whole groups. The political fight is over ideas, power, policy, and results. Expect opponents to call this fear politics, while supporters call it the overdue return of common sense. That split is why the Texas Senate race matters. It is becoming a national argument in miniature. One candidate is being framed as the culture war risk. The other is being framed as the law and order choice. And if Republicans keep the message focused, this race could become a brutal test of Democratic cultural positioning. So here is my question for you. Is this race really about one candidate? Or is it about where America is heading? If you are from Texas, I especially want to hear from you. Does this message land, or is the reaction overblown? Drop your take in the comments, because this Senate fight may become one of the biggest stories of the cycle. Subscribe to Uncle Sam Briefing, stay sharp, and stay with us, because the next move could be even bigger.